Hi there. Oh, jeez. Damn it. Dumb little bit there. Trying to do something. Well, welcome to another movie review stream. My name is Mark McPherson, film critic for movieswithmark.com, twincitiesgeek.com, and filminquiry.com. So, it's the week of Thanksgiving, and we are in the heart of award season right now. A lot of big films that are coming out that are vying for awards, and I'm just getting obliterated over here. Just too much stuff I've been watching, so I'm going to try to cover some of the big stuff here today, as well as I'll briefly mention, like, we've already got, like, the award screeners are out, so I'll briefly talk about a few of those. But we will, of course, be talking about the bigger films coming out this Thanksgiving weekend. Namely, we'll be talking about, I'll have a review of Disney's Wish, the latest animated film, maintaining the Disney tradition of them having an animated film every Thanksgiving now. We'll also be talking about Napoleon, Ridley Scott's new historical epic starring Joaquin Phoenix, about the French leader Napoleon Bonaparte. We'll also be talking about an extra early review of Dream Scenario, the new film starring Nicolas Cage, which is coming out on December 1st. And I will also be talking about another film coming out this weekend. I believe it's expanding this weekend. I'll be talking about a film that a lot of people have been looking forward to, Saltburn. So we will get to that as well. So yeah, pretty much everything that I'm reviewing, fairly rare, but like this is like the first time everything I'm reviewing is early. Wish, Napoleon, and Saltburn, they don't come out until Thanksgiving. So, well, I actually, technically tomorrow, but still early. And Dream Scenario won't be out for like at least another week, so plenty of early reviews. So if you'd like to hear more early reviews and stay up to date on the latest movies, which I do because I do nothing but like look at all these screeners and all that, be sure to like and subscribe to stay informed and all that. So without further ado, let's get to the big films coming out this Thanksgiving weekend. And we'll, of course, start with probably the biggest one. A lot of people looking forward to Disney's Wish. So let me get the notes up here. Get a drink of water, and then we will launch right into it. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. So, Wish is the latest animated film from Disney, made to commemorate Disney's 100 years of being a studio. Now, it's interesting because this film was supposed to have the animated short Once Upon a Studio, which came out a few weeks ago. And it was meant to kind of combine the two into... Oh, jeez. Pardon. Give me one moment here. That's why you rehearse stuff. Okay. Let me try that one more time. Okay. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. So, Wish is the latest animated film from Disney, meant to commemorate 100 years of Walt Disney animation, producing animated cartoons. Now, we already did have this kind of like Disney 100-year tribute with Once Upon a Studio a few weeks back, which was a very, very, very charming and I think very respectful short. That paid tribute to like the long history of Disney animation. It was like a big crossover event, and basically it was all the Disney characters cavorting about the Disney studio, and then there was like a little heartfelt message to the legacy that Walt had built up. And it was just fun. It was neat to see. It was short. It was like around like 10 minutes. It was just it was in and out. It was a neat little animated short, and it was a decent way to pay tribute. Now that short was, if I remember correctly, I believe it was supposed to appear right before Wish, and I can kind of understand now why they decided not to. Like, well, for one, like, it's a little bit long for a short. Generally, the shorts that you put before Disney's feature films tend to be a little bit shorter than 10 minutes. In fact, when they weren't shorter, like, there was that whole debacle with I believe it was like Coco, where they had that Frozen short that was like roughly like 20 minutes long, and like people were aggravated about that, so I guess they didn't want to have that happen again. But another reason not to have Once Upon a Studio right before Wish is that it'd be too easy to compare them. Because Wish, it is very much meant to be an ode to Disney. It is meant to, like, recognize that they've been around for 100 years and pay tribute. But unlike Once Upon a Studio, Wish is trying to... It has the appearance of like an original narrative on the surface, but really, the more you watch it and the more it becomes obvious, like, if not by the second act, then definitely by the third, that this whole film is just like an amalgamation of all the Disney elements, all the tropes, all the character types, and just all the references, just all smashed together into like this nostalgic hot dish. And and you think like, okay, maybe it's just taking all the best elements and bringing them together, but once you get into it, it's like this tastes off. It's just like it's all the stuff that you love about Disney, but it's all like combined here, and it's not gelling well, just because it feels like it's trying to hit all the hallmarks that everyone's come to expect from Disney, and not making them like all function all that well together. To the film's credit, it is trying to make them all work. So the premise is that it takes place in this Mediterranean island called like the Kingdom of Rosa, and it's supposed to be a place that's run by this king, King Magnifico, voiced by Chris Pine, who is a sorcerer. And he has the ability to grant people's wishes and make them come true. But instead of doing that, he decides to offer people a safe haven. You can come to his island. You can live rent free. You don't have to worry about money. Don't have to worry about food or protection or anything like that, as long as you essentially give up your wish to the king. Basically, he takes like your fondest desire, like your wish, the one thing you want to happen in life. Takes it away from you and then erases your memory of it so that you won't know about it until later when he decides to grant it. Now when he decides to grant that wish, it's at random. It's like, I think it's like, it's kind of like a lottery. It's just like, just wait your turn and then, one day I'll grant your wish. But for now, I'm just going to hang on to them. And just from that premise alone, you can kind of see where this is going, right? Like, when you start just like basically questioning the logic of what the king is doing here, it's sinister. And it's not a big surprise once, his evil plan is revealed. So Asha, voiced by Ariana DeBose, she works in the inside Magnifico's kingdom, and she's aiming to be King Magnifico's apprentice. But during the interview process, she learns that, well, King Magnifico, he doesn't really have that many intentions of granting wishes because he's very selective, and he decides that he's just going to keep certain wishes. In particular, Asha is worried that her grandfather, who is 100 years old now, is never going to get his wish, which, I mean, 100 years and he still hasn't gotten it. That should have been like a big tip-off here. There are so many like big tip-offs to realize that, yeah, King Magnifico is kind of running a racket here. He's not good. He's harvesting wishes, all for himself. Not a big reveal once that happens. So, feeling defeated and realizing that the kingdom that she's existed in for her entire life has been a lie, Asha makes a wish upon a star, and a particular star comes down. This cute little star that has like an adorable little face comes down and starts spreading around magic and showing off to Asha all this cool stuff that it can do. One of the cool things it can do is it can make animals talk. In particular, the star makes Asha's goat, Valentino, speak. And the goat has the voice of Alan Tudyk, because of course it does. Like, Alan Tudyk always does like the animal voices in Disney films, and here it's like it's a solid transition. He's doing the voice of a goat, and then he just brings like his deep and funny voice out here. If you've watched like Harley Quinn, he's basically doing like his Clayface voice, including kind of like building up his words and having a lot of bravado to him. which is cute. I have to admit, like Tudyk is doing the best with what he can with this role. I would say the same for DeBose and Pine as well. But they are very much like Tudyk. They're all very much locked within a particular character archetype, in which there's not a lot of time to give them personality, because so much of the film is just trying to hit all the familiar beats, tones, and tropes with these characters. So like Asha, they make very, very quirky. They make her, very, like very emotional around her family, very like, prone to like fight back, all the hallmarks we'd expect with this type of character. King Magnifico, of course, he's egotistical, he's vain, he catches himself just gazing at himself in the mirror. And, yeah, they pretty much just like fall into like, the typical tropes and archetypes, all the while making Disney references as much as they can. Like they quote other Disney films. They have little references here and there. Like the staff that Asha works with, they're all like the Seven Dwarves, but like they're not like it's weird. Like they're not specifically like these like the dwarves. Like but like they don't look like dwarves because they're not. But you look at all their you look at their personalities and the way that they're designed. You're kind of like, oh, are these supposed to be the dwarves? And the more that the story goes on, it's like, okay, yep, they're just doing like Snow White here. And then there's lots of little quotes. There's like they offhandedly mention like Peter Pan and Mary Poppins here and there. And it's one of those things where this whole film, like it's clearly just referencing all the other Disney films. And if it's not clear by the second act, it's crystal clear by the third act, in which they're kind of more or less just pointing at everything that Disney has done before. And the thing is, like, the Disney CGI films have always kind of had that element where they're just kind of like, oh yeah, we're poking fun. Like here's a reference to Frozen, and here we're mentioning Big Hero 6, and then we mentioned Zootopia here and there. But it was all kind of like Easter eggs. Here, it's not like background Easter eggs. Here it's like foreground Easter eggs that are just kind of have like big neon signs pointing to them the whole time, saying like, hey, this is a blatant reference to Zootopia. Do you get it? And here's a blatant reference here's a blatant reference to Peter Pan. Here's one to Mary Poppins and Snow White and Fantasia, and then like, yeah, you get it after a while. And the thing is, that wouldn't be bad if the film had like more going for it. And I feel like because it's trapped with trying to like, hit all those beats, there isn't a lot of time to get to know Asha and King Magnifico, because when they're not just, going through the standard motions, they're doing the musical numbers, which, to the film's credit, the musical numbers they're good. Like there are songs that I liked, like I like the one about like how like I'm a Star was pretty good. The one that Chris Pine sings, of course, I was kind of looking forward to, which is called like This Is the Thanks I Get, which is pretty fun. I like the way it's assembled. The thing is, and I know like I've just recently seen the film, and usually I can't determine whether or not they're earworms, so I'd still have to take some time to process it. But just based on what I've heard, I'm not quite sure. Like these are going to be like as memorable as like the stuff from Frozen or Moana, which is fair to compare, because it's like it's the same studio, it's just many of the same people who have worked on those films. So you're kind of like, okay, you kind of expect these songs to be a bit more memorable. And of course, time will tell. And there are a few, like, usually I gotta have like a while to process these songs, like, because I think like about a week after Moana, I started realizing, oh yeah, these are earworms, these are going to get stuck in my head for a long time, because I saw the film about 3 weeks before it came out, and then a week after seeing it, I'm like, yeah, that's stuck in my head. I can't remember as many lyrics here. I'm sure like over time there'll be a few people who will mark these films as their favorites, mark these songs as their favorites. But just like offhand, like these songs, like they're okay, but they're not on the same level as like Disney's previous work. The same goes for the animation as well. Like you can tell they're trying to merge kind of like like the similar designs that they've had with previous films, while also trying to embrace a little bit of that 2D style, so that it can be a little bit more nostalgic and pay better tribute to classic Disney films, even though you would think just having the film in traditional 2D would be enough of like a big tribute. But here it's kind of odd. Like it's not on the same level as like when Disney has tried this with something like Paperman. Like it's not as compelling. Like you can tell they're trying to have like that kind of like bright and colorful storybook look, but honestly, it just kind of comes off as just kind of some of like the similar designs as like as Frozen. They like characters all have like like the big expressive eyes, like the little bit of like the bigger heads, and they have the same mannerisms, a lot of the same slapstick that you've come to expect from like Disney films. And that's honestly that's kind of like the biggest criticism of this is just that it feels like a very like a very like average Disney film, or a studio trying to make what they perceive of as like a Disney film. Like an executive from like another studio is just like, look, Disney films all have this stuff, so just plug them all in here all at once. And then who knows? Maybe we'll turn out something interesting here. And unfortunately, it doesn't work, especially when it keeps like winking at the screen. It's like, oh, here's a reference to Bambi, here's a reference to Snow White. It keeps bringing up so many of these references that within like the last few minutes of this film, it feels like it's trying to like push out as many references as it can. It's like, oh wait, we forgot to mention this film, this film, this film, and just push it hard. Like even right up to like the post-credit scene is just like, another quick nod to like, like the Disney logo and the Disney song. So yeah, it sadly comes off more like a commercial than it does as a tribute. And especially when you compare it to Once Upon a Studio, which was very respectful and like a decent nod to like the past. Wish is just kind of like a very weird, like a weird idea of trying to make an original narrative, but also trying to force in all the references, all the tropes, all the beats, the same musical numbers, and the same brand of like comedy and musicals and everything that you've come to know about Disney animated films. And it's just all in this big pastiche that doesn't fit together. And I wanted it to, because like I was, I kind of dug the premise of the film, a king wanting to take away ambition, but everything about the way that the film proceeds, it just feels like it's a first draft. It feels like there are good ideas here, but it needs a second draft. It's got to go over this. It's got to find something more and not just go through the same motions as previous Disney films before it. And I know that like a lot of people are probably going to love the film on that basis, where it feels like it's, it's like the Disney animation studio going back to basics with a very, medieval fantasy story here. And, a typical story about a triumphant heroine who wants to prove herself and, live up to like, her dreams and potential and highlight ambition, which are all good ideas. But the way that it's assembled here is just bizarre and just it doesn't work. And I wish it could, because it's 100 years of Disney, so you'd want to have a film that paid a better tribute. But unfortunately, that film is Once Upon a Studio, and Wish is just like the weirder tribute that really doesn't work as well as it should. So that's Wish, and that will be in theaters tomorrow, if you want to check it out. Let's see. What did you think of the new Hunger Games? Unfortunately, I haven't seen that, Pyro. That's the thing I gotta mention too. Is like I have been wicked busy with all the films that I've been viewing that I haven't had a chance to see the new Hunger Games. I haven't even had a chance to see Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, which I wanted to cover, but just like too much else. And also, Next Goal Wins. It's just like last week was just murderous. Like between like seeing Napoleon and Dream Scenario and Wish, not to mention all the frickin' screeners that I got thrown at me this week. It's been chaos. So I think somewhere down the line I will get to the new Hunger Games, because I've heard that it's a pretty good for being a prequel rather. But yeah, honestly, at this point, I can't really say. I have heard good things. I will say that. All right. I am the only fan of Next Goal Wins. I've heard it's very divisive. I've heard that there's some questionable depictions in there, which I'll see it. I've heard the concerns, and I'm curious to see how they play out. So yeah. New Hunger Games was good, but a rushed ending, which is interesting because the film runs like 2 hours and 42 minutes. So it makes you wonder, how much more time did you need for that? Interesting enough to hear that, because it's, yeah. Well, I am very much looking forward to it now. So, all right. Let's cover the next film coming out tomorrow, and that is Ridley Scott's Napoleon. Let me get my notes up here, and we will proceed in 3, 2, 1. So Ridley Scott's Napoleon is a historical epic about the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and Scott's film, it's weird. Like, it has its hills and valleys, and it takes its liberties here and there, and thematically, I think it's on point. I like what Scott is trying to do with this film by trying to frame Napoleon as this guy who just had had an ego, but also kind of just recognized his opportunity to seize power, and just kind of just passively went through the motions, acting as though everything that was going to happen to him was granted to him by destiny. And from that framing, it's interesting what Scott is able to explore with framing Napoleon this way. He's able to find interesting moments where he highlights his love life with Josephine, played by Vanessa Kirby, and their relationship is just kind of it's one of those ones that it has a little bit of passion, but you don't get to see as much of it, and it's weird. There's chemistry between Phoenix and Kirby in a few scenes, and then other scenes are just kind of flat, where it's where the romantic tension between them isn't quite there. And sometimes it is intentional, it's meant to showcase the decay of their marriage, and how Napoleon only wants this woman just so that he can have an heir. But other times, other times, it feels like it's trying, and it's not working in a few scenes. I will say this: I like how Phoenix plays this role straight, and that there are moments where, honestly, the film gets funny at times, for as strange as it sounds. I'm not going to try to spoil the lines here, but there is one talk. There is one fight, actually, that Napoleon has at the dinner table with Josephine, in which he's arguing about destiny. He talks about he talks about his food being his destiny, and there's a little bit of a food fight, and then there's other scenes of him just being inadequate in bed, and just a few scenes that are actually pretty funny within this, which I think kind of work for this film, because it's trying to cover a broad range here. It's trying to cover everything from the execution of Marie Antoinette, when Napoleon kind of saw his time to kind of rise through the ranks, all the way up to Napoleon's kind of almost unceremonious death. So basically, yeah, it's the life and death of Napoleon within this film. Now, of course, the big thing that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be looking forward to here is how are the war scenes, because this isn't, the film isn't just contained to showcasing Waterloo, although Waterloo, it's meant to be the big epic finale battle, and it is pretty cool. It's beautifully staged. I love how of course Scott gets the camera out there and has tons of people on there. There's lots of violence, there's lots of action, carnage, and brutality. Very vicious brutality, which I kind of gotta admit caught me off guard at a few times. There's horses on the battlefield, and they get blown to bits. There's tons of blood here and there, especially when they cover other parts of the campaign, at one point where he's cutting off troops, as he's making his way into Russia, in which people are falling through the ice to their death. Just very brutal, bloody battle scenes. They're all exciting and cool to watch. I think I should preference this review by saying that if that's the only thing you're coming to this film for, you may be dismayed by how many of the scenes that are not on the battlefield, which are kind of just they kind of just linger on trying to find something more within Napoleon's ego. And some of them, a lot of those scenes don't work as well as they should. There are a lot of scenes that are just honestly kind of boring here and there, and it's mostly just because like it's trying to portray this kind of like nihilism that comes through Napoleon, which I don't feel comes across as well as it should, because there are several scenes where like Napoleon is just almost kind of like bored himself, where he's just kind of like falling asleep in all this, which I understand the intent of these scenes. I kind of do admire Scott for trying to frame Napoleon in this way, but there are a lot of scenes that really just don't work here. And here's the thing that might make me reconsider like how I'm viewing this film right now, with like its hills and valleys. Like, you know, like the battles are cool, and a few scenes between, you know, Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby are kind of cool, but then there are these patches where it's trying to cover the politics. It's trying to cover, like Napoleon trying to get an heir, his romances and his political strategies that just kind of fall flat. I'm willing to bet that if I watch the director's cut of this film, which Ridley Scott has said there is, like, I mean, this film runs 2.5 hours, and he said that his director's cut is going to be roughly somewhere around the ballpark of 4 hours. So there's at least another hour and a half that was cut out of this film. I'm curious to see if that kind of has more scenes that kind of like fill in more of like that kind of have more of a chemistry between Phoenix and Kirby, but also showcase more sides of Napoleon, because you can definitely tell, especially in the first act of this film, that it is a little bit rushed. Like within like the first act, it's trying to cover all these key events that led up to like Napoleon's rise, and they just kind of like glaze over them quick. Like, they're just like, okay, here's when the execution was, here's the revolution, here was when they were forcing, these politicians out, here's when they had the insurrection, and it's just like, these are like blink and you'll miss it moments. Like, if you go to the bathroom early when you see this film and you come back, it's like, wait, how much history did I miss it? Because it's just like, in the first act, just like bam, 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 bam. It's like, here's the state, and it just skates by them really quick. And I got the feeling that in Scott's director's cut, which, it's really Scott, with these big epics, there's always going to be director's cut from him. I get the feeling like those scenes are going to be fleshed out a little bit more. And I almost think that I'm going to view it the same way that I viewed Kingdom of Heaven, because like Kingdom of Heaven, the theatrical cut I liked, but I felt like there were like key parts missing from it to make me like it a little bit more. And then later I did watch the extended director's cut, and it was a lot better, and I actually liked the film a lot more. So as it stands now, I like Napoleon in bits and pieces, despite how flat it appears at times. But honestly, like I'm very much looking forward to like the director's cut to see if I like it a little bit more. But I will say, for the few moments that it made me laugh with Joaquin Phoenix's performance, for the scenes of brutality that just kind of like smack you in the face at times, including one scene where Napoleon just smacks Josephine right in front of all his subordinates, which did catch me off guard a little bit with how he delivers it. I kind of dug the film. Like, it's definitely not Scott at his best, especially when you compare this cut to like Kingdom of Heaven. But again, when the director's cut eventually comes out, which I think it's going to come out on Apple TV, I am curious to see if I dig it more. But as it stands, it's just like it's an okay historical epic. It has its unique moments here and there. It's beautifully shot for a lot of its war scenes. Joaquin Phoenix's performance works here and there. When he's actually kind of like emoting and taking charge of scenes is pretty cool. But other scenes where he's just kind of like going through the motions and just, doing like the expected, like, political meetings and maneuvers, or even just like just sitting in a room, it's not as intimidating as some of the other scenes. So very uneven here. I will say though that I think Vanessa Kirby's performance is a bit more consistent than Phoenix. I feel like she has a little bit more power and desperation, and also more smarts. Like, at one point, she is just like flat out asking Napoleon, like, look, I can read the writing on the wall. We're probably going to get divorced. When's it going to happen? It's just like, she's a little bit more, like, they stage her as a little bit more intelligent than Napoleon. within this film, which I think is kind of an interesting angle. I also got to admire, like, Scott going for some, a little bit of historical revisionism here and there. Like, at one point when he has his campaign in Egypt, Napoleon is, like, firing cannons at the pyramids, which is disputed, but it's, like, it looks cool. Which, honestly, Scott's been trying to give, like, these long-winded responses to explain why the film is the way it is, but honestly, he just needs to go full John Carpenter at this point. Just go like, I don't care. It looks cool. which to his credit, yes, there are a lot of scenes, just the way that they're staged, they look cool. Historically accurate? Probably not, but a lot of historical epics usually take their liberties here and there, and if you're going to take your liberties, might as well take them to make the film look cool, and he does. So the film looks beautiful, has some decent performances here and there, but a lot of patches that really don't work here. So if you're going in just expecting like a fast-paced, action-packed historical epic, which the film is kind of advertised as, you're not really going to get that. So fair warning if you're going to this film. But if you're willing to stick with it through a few boring patches here and there, it actually is a beautiful-looking film. And it kind of worked for me. Like, it's going to be a highly divisive film because, like I said, big patches that don't work, but also long stretches, cool war scenes that just honestly made the film for me. So I'm very curious to see what the director's cut is, and I might do a second review just to see if anything changes. But as it stands now, it's an okay historical epic. I mean, it's fun to see Joaquin Phoenix throw food. So, and some cool war scenes. So yeah. So Napoleon, that will be in theaters tomorrow. And will likely be on Apple TV Plus, depending on how it plays out at the box office, probably either late in December or definitely in January. So, and hopefully the director's cut will be out by then. Let's see. Pyro going off a little bit more on, was it Hunger Games? Yeah. The way the movie handles trans stuff was not great. Oh, wait, on Next Goal Wins. So, yeah, the way the movie handles trans stuff was not great, but I'm cis, so I don't really know for sure. Yeah, and that's one of those things where, I do like having more insight from other people on, like, this topic, and outside of just, like, my own. 'Cause I'm sure, like, the way that I view the film will, be much different, from someone who's more affected by those issues. That being said, I still would like to hear the perspective because that, that better expands on that material, and, you can understand like the criticism more. So yeah. It'll be interesting when I finally do see that film. All right, let's get to our next film. This one is not coming out tomorrow. It will actually be coming out on December 1st. But I figured we might as well get it out of the way, since I already saw it. Well, actually, let me double check here. Oh, okay. So this film... Okay, so actually, I was a little bit mistaken here. This film actually is coming out tomorrow in a few markets. So if you might... So possibly like an art house theater you might be able to see it there. But if not, you will be able to watch it on December 1st, so roughly a week from now. This is the Nicolas Cage film. In fact, this is, it's an A24 film, and I usually love A24 films because they generally give us some weird merchandise with it, and they gave us these Nick Cage sleeping masks with his face with glasses, which is interesting. So yeah, I was very much looking forward to this film. So let's get my notes up here, and we will talk about Dream Scenario. All right. So here we go in 3, 2, 1. So Dream Scenario is a new film from A24 starring Nicolas Cage, who plays a college professor in which everybody around him and people he doesn't even know just start having dreams about him. Very odd dreams where, Nicolas Cage playing, this Professor Paul Matthews, who like it's not that remarkable of a guy. Like, it feels like, he was trying to, he's trying to like push a book on ants, and wants to kind of like, and wants to, become a bigger success, but it's not happening for him. And he's just like, it feels like, he's kind of washed up, and like, he's just going to be teaching for the rest of his life. He just starts appearing in other people's dreams, not really doing anything. Just kind of just passing through and just saying like, hey, what's up? And it's usually like people having like nightmares, like something horrible happening to them. And then there's Paul, just walking in with his glasses and, his bald head, and just kind of just strolling on by, maybe, commenting here and there and not really doing anything else. So at first, Paul is intrigued by this. He's kind of like, oh, that's actually kind of neat. I'm appearing in a lot of people's dreams now. And because like he appears more frequently in other people's dreams, he starts becoming a little bit famous. And so, a lot of people, they want to get photos with him. They want to chat with him. They want to talk about his dreams. And he's just loving, having not been that famous his entire life. He's just enjoying, becoming like such a sensation. Now, the way that the film tries to proceed with this is it tries to use this appearance in dreams as an allegory for going viral, which, fairly obvious, allegory here. The problem I have with this is that it's, this is something like, it's a little bit debatable how this type of film proceeds, because Paul really doesn't have much control over how this affects him. So, like, when he appears in other people's dreams, he can't really change the outcome. Like, and I love the fact how, I will say this, I love that they never give a firm explanation for why Paul keeps appearing in people's dreams. It's just something that happens. He doesn't really understand it. Nobody else understands it. It's just there, and it's just a part of people's lives now. A part that, everyone experiences. And because of that, I think it's an interesting angle to see how this is like a level of fame that Paul can't control. Because without giving like too much away, like the dreams don't go as well as Paul would hope. Like there's mild variations that he experiences with other people, but when as the dreams progress, like they start getting to a level where people start to despise Paul for something that is out of his control. Now, the way that the film proceeds with this, like it's trying to be a commentary on cancel culture, but like I go back and forth on this, because like on one level, this is something that Paul can't control at this, because like you feel like, like if you become that level of viral sensation, you feel like you have to have a little bit of control over it. But at the same time, it's also, trying to recognize that if you do have that level of viral fame and people start, pushing you into like social media, and, other people start adopting you as a meme, you lose more control of it, which is, an essential part of like, Nicolas Cage at this point too. Like, I mean, with stuff like, Nicolas Cage appearing, in stuff here and there, and it's an interesting, allegory, I think, to explore. The problem is, I think the film kind of like settles a little bit too much on the simplistic aspects of watching, Paul go from like being a viral sensation that everybody loves to, a lesser person who everyone despises, to the point where he's so low that he can only, appeal to like people on like the fringe of online culture. Which especially by the third act, it really settles into, both the commodification of this idea of like appearing in dreams, and also, the level of, how far you can fall from this. That being said, I have to admit, there are a plenty of scenes in this film that did make me just laugh out loud. And I think that's because of just Nicolas Cage's performance here. That there are so many scenes that are meant to be absurd and ridiculous, and Cage just throws himself into it. In particular, there's one scene, I don't want to reveal too much, where he confronts somebody about, somebody who wants to like relive their dream with Paul, and the way that he proceeds through it just has like the perfect climax to it. Just from his reaction and how he, feels uncomfortable with it, and just the way that he makes his exit is just all beautifully absurd. I love the way that it plays out. I also really dug kind of like the relationship that he has with his wife Janet, played by Julianne Nicholson, and how she is a little bit jealous that everyone else is kind of experiencing these dreams with him, and she doesn't have that same luxury, where it feels like even though she's living with this guy, she doesn't have that level of access to him as a person. Which is an interesting angle to explore, and I'm very glad that the film kind of settles on that level of heart for where it wants to go with the finale, which leads to a pretty a weird and sweet moment towards the end, which I think, like, for as much as, I was starting to almost kind of like tune out with the third act, where it's just kind of like just showing Paul descend further and further into the muck of like kind of like the fringes of online culture. It was nice to see it kind of, go back to where it was, where Paul feels like he does have control of his dreams again. There are some questionable aspects of it that I do have with how it tries to parallel with cancel culture that I don't think hold, that I think kind of like make the allegory crack a little here and there, where it doesn't line up as well as it should for this. But for that staging, for having this idea of just, Nicolas Cage appearing in everyone's dreams, I think for at least like the first two acts, it does explore some funny and bizarre territory here that it's just weird enough that I think it works. I think it also helps that you have a great comedic backup cast here. Like, you have Michael Cera playing this kind of this viral marketing head guy who's just kind of like, who really wants to sell Paul into like this idea that, he gets associated with other people's dreams, and fairly simple, like, like the commodification of people, like the whole late stage capitalism commentary. It mostly works. It's kind of, very on the nose, but I feel like it worked for this film. You have like Tim Meadows playing the dean at the college, who has like some very, very nice dry moments of comedy between him and Nicolas Cage, which play out fairly well. And yeah, just the way that like the dreams become more commodified as the film goes along, I thought was like an interesting touch. I don't feel like there's as much explored with that idea as there could be, but I feel like they found just enough of the funny moments within that material to make it work here. So I was honestly kind of hoping for something, I think it might be a little bit unfair to like compare it to like something like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where, it's about, getting into someone's head and try to like, even like, relating this to something like, like Being John Malkovich, about, having that loss of identity and becoming like a sensation and feel like you lose yourself to fame. I feel like it doesn't explore as much as it could, but at the same time, like the scenes that they do stage here, they do work. And let's face it, the number one reason you're going to this film is to see Nicolas Cage be weird in other people's dreams and react like a weirdo around other people when he becomes a viral hit. And he does that. And it's wickedly absurd and hilarious in a lot of scenes that just for like the first two acts are just beautifully hilarious and absurd and surreal. And like even in the third act, when it kind of like tones it down and tries to, get to like, like the fall of Paul, it mostly holds consistent with, Paul just wanting, to be accepted. And I think at its core, that's what kind of makes the film work, even when it gets a little bit messy here and there. So yeah, if you're just going to it to see Nicolas Cage do some weird stuff, you're gonna get that, and you're actually gonna get a little bit of heart to it as well. So yeah, I actually really appreciated that. So, Dream Scenario will be playing in select theaters tomorrow, and will be expanding to theaters nationwide on December 1st, so next Friday. We got a comment from Input Brick, says, love your channel, and your thoughts on movies, hearts. Well, thank you so much. Glad you enjoy it. Feel free to... you probably already have. Like, I'm not going to do the whole like and subscribe thing. You already know. all that CTA stuff. All right, we got one more review here. One more to dole out here, and it's a juicy one. It's Saltburn, the latest film from Emerald Fennell, who did Promising Young Woman. So let me get my notes up here, and we will get to this film, which I believe, let me double check when this is coming out, because I think it's coming out tomorrow. Is it? It's expanding tomorrow. It had a limited release last week, but it's expanding tomorrow, so you can catch it then. All right, here we go. Oh wait, hang on, I gotta double check something here. Okay, and yeah, here we. Wait. There we go. Okay. All right, and in 3, 2, 1. So Saltburn is the latest film from Emerald Fennell. And it's a film all about, trying to find a place for yourself and also seeking revenge. It's very much like Promising Young Woman, where it's mostly a film about revenge that is messy and not quite, it doesn't quite go where you think it's going, with a few twists here and there. And it also goes into like some very odd and strange places within this film. But I feel like for the most part, it kind of works. Like it felt like it was kind of like, like the film was kind of like resting on its laurels in a few scenes here and there. But just when I thought the film had become simplistic, it would find some other way to get weirder and take another wild route with it. So the film is about Oliver Quick, played by Barry Keoghan, which you might recognize from like films like the Eternals and what was that great film from last year, the Banshees of Inisherin. And he plays Oliver Quick, this college student at Oxford, who wants to get noticed. He wants to try to like find his way into the hearts of Felix Catton, played by Jacob Elordi. And he wants to try to find a way to, be around this guy because he's rich, he's sexy, he wants to be with this dude. So he tries to find ways to kind of like slowly get into this guy's life. He runs into him outside when he's riding his bike. He hangs out with him at the bar while they're drinking. And it's just kind of like slowly trying to get into like Felix's life. And the more that he becomes involved, the more, like they start forming a bond over time. Like at one point when, Oliver mentions that he's had a passing in his family, Felix wants to be a little bit comforting to him. And so, when they're on break, he decides Felix decides, hey, Oliver, why don't you come to my manor? Why don't you come to like Saltburn? We have a big place. You can hang out there. It's a huge estate. We have a butler, we can have fun. There's lots of people who hang out there. So he figures, yeah, I'll come with you. And, he gets to meet his whole family, and they're very welcoming. They're very weird. Like they're very obsessed with like beauty, and they're a little bit catty here and there, as like, upper class people can be. But Oliver's still, Oliver just kind of like goes with it. And, but the thing is, like, Oliver doesn't just want to be around these people. He wants to essentially be them in more ways than one. Like, let's put it this way. At one point, Oliver witnesses, somebody doing something very sexual in the bathroom. Later on, Oliver will come into the bathroom and just try to literally soak up everything where that person was and what they were doing sexually. Just because like Oliver, like at first, like I love the way that the film sets up Oliver as just like, this meek guy who wants to kind of like slowly make his way into, into Felix's gaze. And the further that it goes along, like once he gets to the estate, it feels like, oh yes, I'm in. And thus he becomes weirder and weirder and weirder with his obsession with the Catton family. And the further that it goes, like it not only gets like weirder and more sexual, like he tries to, kind of like basically have sex, try to like move up within the family by having sex with them. But at the same time, also just pick them off, like just like kill them. and try to like frame it as like, you know, being like either a suicide or just an unfortunate incident, and just kind of like move his way up. Like it's meant to be a little bit of a twist, but you know, the way that Oliver proceeds, you know, just with every way that he acts in this film, you know that he's manipulating this family. You know that he's trying to move his way up. But even when you can like kind of figure out the big twist that comes by the end of the film here, watching it proceed is kind of cool. Like I liked the way that it got more weird and uncomfortable, especially with how the other guests who are at the estate, in particular, Farley Start, who is Felix's cousin, played by Archie Madekwe, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Basically, Farley he can sense that, you know, like Oliver is kind of like moving in on his turf. He's just kind of like, you know, oh, you're trying to, you want to be at this place, but I'm telling you, I'm in this family. I know what's up. They're not going to kick me out, even when they keep kicking other people out. Like there are other visitors they have who, you know, just kind of like come and go. And Oliver is doomed to become one of them as well, but that's the problem. Oliver wants to be something more. And it's not enough that he has like, you know, the support of everyone around him, you know, even when he's basically just lying to them at several points. And even when they throw him like the strangest birthday party, like they have like a birthday party for him that's framed, the theme of the party is Midsummer Night's Dream, so he's wandering around the party with an open shirt wearing antlers, while there's a spit roast and everyone's in costumes. It's just like it's bizarre, but it's like it's fitting for this story, especially by the time it gets to the ending here, which just it goes very much like off the rails. Not completely off the rails, just like I did not expect this to happen. You can kind of sense where this is going, especially during one scene at a grave where Oliver gets naked and, well, I won't spoil it. You just have to see it. But yeah, it goes into some very, very, very bizarre territory here. I would say that if you've seen stuff like the killing of a sacred deer, it's somewhat in that vein. But also very much like, you know, like Promising Young Woman, where it is very much a story about revenge, and just like the way that it maneuvers the kind of like the sexual tension here, and watching this upper class family collapse with Oliver kind of orchestrating it all, is kind of neat. Like I especially dug the way the film is framed, the way that how that Oliver is kind of like showcased in reflections constantly, with either, you know, just like showing, you know, like the water, like in a bathtub, or, you know, just like looking out at the lake, just all these, you know, like you can sense that, you know, he wants to be part of this matter, not just a part of this family, but just, you know, have this lifestyle for himself. So yeah, just on that level of just like the brutal and sexual tension that goes through it, it's not bad. Like I don't want to build it up as like, you know, like the most sexual film of the year, because it's not. There's tons more sexual films I've seen this year. But in terms of just being kind of like, you know, this little revenge film, it mostly works. There are scenes I feel where it just kind of almost kind of like goes on autopilot for relying on like a few like quick cut montages of watching Oliver just kind of like based in this lifestyle and this kind of like party atmosphere. I feel like there's a little bit too much of that here and there. Like a few scenes of that I don't mind, but there's like a one too many where just like, okay, I get the idea, I see where he's coming from, but like I'd like it to pick up the pace a little bit here, because I want to see more of that tension there. I don't just want to see, you know, Oliver just like, you know, get drunk and then get like jealous in the corner, or, you know, just kind of stew in his, like he's stewing in his feelings throughout. So, you know, having that set to music here and there, it's just like, it's like, I get the idea. Let's keep going with this, because I'm intrigued by the premise. But yeah, I felt like even though I felt like it had to pick up the pace here and there, I felt like it still kind of worked at me. You know, for being a film from director Emerald Fennell, I like this a little bit more than Promising Young Woman, only because I felt like that film was a bit thematically messy and all over the place. And I feel like the story got a little bit lost in that film. Despite parts of it that I loved. With Saltburn, I feel like that similar assembly actually kind of works a little bit better for this story, because like it is a film where you do want to like veer off into different territory, and you do want to see it like, get messy and, explore like different characters as it goes along, and then just take a few wild routes here and there. Not like I say it takes some wild routes, but by like the second act, you can kind of see the writing on the wall here and see where this is going, more or less, that there's not a lot of shock value, especially if you're, used to kind of like these, like surreal erotic thrillers. It's kind of par for the course on that. But, for the performances here, like especially like, you have like a pretty good cast here. You have Rosamund Pike and Richard E. Grant playing members of this family, and Carey Mulligan. They all have like their little moments to shine here and there. I especially loved watching Richard E. Grant, who's usually such like, a chipper fellow, just kind of like descend into madness as this film gets weirder and darker as it goes along. So just for the performances alone, I would say the film is worth watching. And like the twists, they're all right. The sexual tension, it's there in a few scenes. It actually kind of works. And the bloody revenge it kind of works. I don't feel it works as much as like the sexual tension. But all things considered, it's a pretty good film. And for as weird as it is, and for as sloppy as it is here and there with its unevenness, it mostly works for the performances and the surreal nature of this erotic revenge thriller. So Saltburn, that is going to be expanding into theaters tomorrow, although it should be playing in limited markets right now. So there you go. So yeah, there's 4 reviews for you. And tell you what, just because like I got so much else to cover, like there's way more in December. But tell you what, I'll do a quick little I got a few of the screeners here that I have watched, and I'm gonna do like a quick I'll do like some very quick reviews here. So here's like some lightning round reviews. Okay, so Fair Play. Pretty okay erotic thriller. It's got some interesting commentary on power dynamics in the workplace and gender roles and relationships. It's worth it just for the performances. They're highly explosive, but I feel like it kind of like loses its way here and there, and it's mostly just, a handful of cool performances. It's an okay erotic thriller. That's what I'm trying to say. I also watched Rustin, which is the story of Bayard Rustin, a civil rights leader who was, former communist and gay, and kind of affected his role in the Black civil rights movement. Interesting to see, and it's got a fairly big all-star cast, and some of the roles work, but not all of them. In particular, I don't think Chris Rock really works all that well in this film. But it's not bad. Like it's a fairly engaging like historical drama, even if it is just kind of going through the typical motions, and even if it is kind of like reducing and sensationalizing a few parts here and there. It's an okay historical drama. Naiad, the story of the woman in her 60s who finally made a world record swim from Cuba to Florida. Fairly by the numbers sports drama, but it's worth it just for the performances alone. I wanted to like it more because like it's meant to be inspirational, but it's just kind of going through the motions, and you're just watching Annette Bening perform a fairly physical role, which she does very well at. So it's one of those films I don't want to rag on it for being a paint by numbers sports drama, but it's more or less that. But Jodie Foster and Annette Bening are great in it, and if that's all you want out of the film, it's fine. And finally, Air, the story of Nike and how they came to establish the Jordans brand. Kind of interesting if you don't know the story, but at the same time, it's kind of like dramatizing, like this. It's a type of film I've seen a lot this year with stuff like Flamin' Hot. It's meant to be a film about a corporation and kind of like showing how they like rose to fame without really showing the part where they fall or where they faltered, especially if you know about Nike's practices that went from the 1980s into the 1990s. So a very, very concerning. Like it's got an all-star cast and they're pretty good, but it's like one of those things where you really gotta like, you know, kind of like suspend some disbelief that, you know, you're kind of supposed to root for Nike in this, which you kind of don't want to. So good performances, but a story that just kind of has a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth. So there you go. Yeah, there's some quick little lightning round reviews for you. And that's not even all the screeners I've got. There's tons more that I've got. But yeah, there you go. There are your reviews for the stream. So let's get some outro music here and do a quick review of what we reviewed here. So I reviewed Disney's Wish, an amalgamation of Disney's 100 years of animated films. And honestly, it's not as good a tribute as Once Upon a Studio. It's a fairly by-the-numbers and average Disney animated film, which you don't really want for commemorating 100 years, unfortunately. So, wish I could like it more, but it's just not a very good film. I also reviewed Ridley Scott's Napoleon, a historical drama about Napoleon Bonaparte, which mostly works. It's got a few good, a lot of great war scenes and a few good scenes between Phoenix and Kirby, despite the fact that there's a lot of dead moments, and I'm hoping that the director's cut will be better. But mild recommendation for Napoleon. I also reviewed Dream Scenario, the film in which Nicolas Cage plays a college professor who enters into people's dreams and becomes a viral hit, only to be succumbed by cancel culture. Gets a little bit messy in its third act, but for the most part, it's a hilarious comedy, and I have to admit, for as much as the third act started to lose me, I was laughing pretty hard at this film. So yeah, very good comedy. And finally reviewed Saltburn, the erotic revenge thriller from Emerald Fennell. It's very uneven here and there, but yeah, as a revenge erotic thriller, it mostly gets the job done, and it has some great performances from a fairly notable all-star cast. So among those, so pretty much all these films are going to be out tomorrow. So between all those, I would say go check out Dream Scenario or go check out Saltburn. If you really do want to see Joaquin Phoenix and Napoleon, just plan it accordingly. It's 2.5 hours. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant. Mild recommendation. I'm hesitant to recommend it because it's 2.5 hours, and there's a lot of dead moments that don't work as much as they should. So on that basis alone, I don't want to recommend the film as much, but I will say definitely try to check out the director's cut when it hits on Apple TV. But yeah, go check out Dream Scenario and Saltburn, depending on what you want. If you want to laugh, I'd say go see Dream Scenario, and if you want a very bizarre erotic revenge thriller, go see Saltburn. So yeah, that's all the reviews I got for today. If you want to check out my written reviews, you can go over to movieswithmark.com or filminquiry.com or twincitiesgeek.com. I write at all three websites there. And I will be back in the next 2 weeks to cover a lot of the big films coming out in December, which honestly I don't even know at this point. I mean, I have a list of all the stuff that I'm watching. It's just a matter of whittling it down. Like offhand, I can tell you I have about 15 screeners I've got on my plate at the moment. So it's a matter of whittling it down. So what'll it be? Well, you have to tune in next time and find out. So if you liked the stream and you like early reviews of the latest movies coming out, be sure to like and subscribe to this, where we will have early reviews coming out. And with a lot more coming out in December and award season coming up, you're going to want to be up to date on all of the films, especially if you want to follow along for award season, which is what I'm trying to do since I am a voting member of the Minnesota Film Critics Association and the Online Film Critics Association. I believe that's Online Film Critics. I believe it. But I vote in a few of those categories. So yeah, be sure to tune in next time. And yeah, thanks for everyone who stopped by, and I will catch you next time. Have a good one, everybody.